First of all, just want to say thanks for this opportunity. But we think it'd be real exciting because it is football season to have a coach. And I'm never going to pass up an opportunity. I love opportunities for coaches to be able to be in front of teachers and administrators, because I'm constantly looking for ways to get in front of you and be able to take away a little bit of that stigma that I know coaches can get sometimes about where our priorities are and what we care about, and want to be able to bring a little bit of that to you today. So you're sitting here and you're, all right, we got a coach up here, but why are we listening to a coach? And that's a great question. You have to ask Beth Nicholas and Karen Cummings. What I'm hoping is just what I can show you a couple things as far as really understanding how similar becoming a head coach can be to becoming an administrator. That move, when we talk about climbing that ladder, and that's really what you push for as far as wanting to move up, is as you climb that ladder, it puts you a little bit further away from what your original passion was, which was having a really large impact on those kids. But really just seeing, you get into this excited as a young person coming out of college, and you're going to make a difference, and you're going to have the impact, and you're going to have classes like this one where every kid's raising their hand, and you're excited about that. I had to throw my picture up there with my guy Kyler, who's doing big things at OU. I'm now a Boomer Sooner on the side. I went to A&M, but I cheer for OU now too. So, but that's the fun part. You're on the front lines. You're in there with kids every day, and even more importantly, and as administrators, you're not dealing with all the other stuff. You get to focus in on those kids. Now as we move up, I'm worried about, do we have food ready for after the game? Do we have the buses set? Do we have this? And you sometimes can lose sight of why you originally did this, because now you're sitting behind a desk and having to make a lot more plans than you are as far as having real big impact with those kids. And so what you have to do once you figure out you're off the front lines is you figure out, what am I going to do to continue to impact those kids? Well, I talked to my dad, who was a former high school head football coach, and I said, all right, now I'm a head coach. Dad, help me out of here a little bit. And he said, well, here's the deal. He said, you're moving from coaching up kids to you're now going to need to coach up coaches, because those are the guys that are going to be on the front lines and have that everyday interaction with those kids. And so what are you doing to coach up your coaches to impact the kids the way that you want them impacted? And I always kept that with me. And so when we talk about coaching up coaches, and I want to throw this up here, you talk about successful coaches, and a lot of you, those are the first two guys you're going to think of. You're going to think of Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, and you're like, if you tell me to act like those two guys, all right, because those are two of the biggest my way or the highway guys, and they've had a lot of success with it, all right? But I remind you, that's a whole different kind of scenario when you do that. It would be great as principals if we could go just recruit the best 5-star teachers that are out there that have the highest star tests, all right? And they could, they'd be out there tweeting, got my 85th offer from Mesquite ISD, hashtag blessed, And that would be awesome. The same way I wish that's how we got football players on our team, is you go out and you recruit the best players. And, hey, as principals and as coaches and as teachers, we'd be pretty good coaches and principals and teachers if we got to go out and recruit exactly who we wanted there. And the ones we didn't want, we'd be like, no, we're good. All right? But we can't do that, all right? And we talk to our coaches a whole lot from year in and year out. When you're at a high school coach, you've got to fit your scheme to your personnel. You cannot fit your personnel to your scheme. And I think that's a big thing when you look at putting a staff together, whether it's a coaching staff or a teaching staff, is you've got to take the best that you can find in the certain situation, and they're not going to walk in the door knowing everything perfect exactly the way you want it. All right? That's what we tell our coaches all the time. Hey, you're going to have to coach them up a little. All right? You can't just expect them to walk in and know how to do everything. All right? Those of you out there that have been hiring in June and July, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, sometimes we're looking for a heartbeat and we're good. So what are you doing to train them up? All right? And what are you doing to make sure you understand what you have coming through the door? All right? So 2 or 3 quick things that I want to leave you with as far as things that we do within our program that I think that you could take and use within your staff, all right? The first one is we talk about coaching up or coaching out. All right, when we first talk about coaching up coaches, all right, I think about as a young coach, and so thinking about if you're hiring young teachers. When I was at A&M, I was going into my junior year at A&M, I got set up at Bryan High. The head coach there was Marty Criswell, who is a longtime friend of my dad's. He's actually a well-known state championship coach from being his time up in Denison. He was the head coach at Bryan High. And got set up through my dad to be able to go volunteer coach for him. And so I went in the door, met, hey, Coach Criswell, it's great to meet you. Know, first thing he said is, you know, where do you see yourself? What do you want to do in your coaching career? I said, well, you know, I played quarterback in high school. I've always figured I wanted to go coach quarterbacks, and then I want to be an offensive coordinator, and then I want to go be a head coach one day. He said, great, you're going to work with our outside linebackers. You know, and I'm sure my, 21-year-old face kind of was like, well, what are you thinking? Well, and he said, you've got to be able to see things from all sides. You've got to look at things from a different perspective if you want to be great, if you want to you might have an opportunity to go be a great offense coordinator, head coach, but if you don't know how to look at things from the defensive perspective, you're not ever going to be as good as you need to be. And that just stuck with me. And I went and helped coach the outside linebackers for that season. And it couldn't have been a better thing for me as a young coach to understand that, you've got to look at things from different directions. When I first started out, I put in my student teaching. My wife was a semester ahead of me, so of course I followed her back up here to do my student teaching. She got started at West Mesquite. I asked to be placed up here, and they placed me at South Garland High School. I found out in May that I was going to be at South Garland, for the following fall. So I went up in May, knocked on Coach Mickey Moss's door and said, hey, I'm going to be here in August as a student teacher, and I'd love to be with you and your football team. And he said, free coach? Great, you're in. Come on. And so he said the same thing that Coach Criswell told me, though. He said, where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? I said, I see myself as a guy that wants to get in the door. I want to learn a lot of things. I want to eventually be an offensive coordinator and then be a head coach. He said, all right, you're going to work with our freshmen, and I'm going to continue to give you responsibilities and teach you up and train you up on the things I think you need to learn. He said, and I'll continue to do that as long as you want to do that. So I was up there on Saturdays and Sundays, and everything that he or his staff told me, I was just taken to a T. But the biggest thing that he gave me is he told me, hey, the direction that all this stuff is going in coaching football is learning technology, and everything's going online. And he got me down there. I was one of the very first ones that understand how to do all that stuff. And as much as I'd like to say it was my football prowess that helped me go get the offensive coordinator job at Allen, I think looking back on it now, Coach Westberg would tell you he was ready to get a video guy. And so it was one of those little things that I just took from a coach, and he took the time to coach me up and make sure I was going to be as prepared as I needed to be to go to that next level. Moving on to Allen, all right, working with Coach Westerberg, all right. He taught me a lot about what you have to do when you talk about training up your coaches. And he talked a lot about you have to be willing to let some coaches fail trying to do things their way, and then coach them up on ways that we can improve things. Early on when I got there, he was still calling the plays. I was the offensive coordinator by title and was just trying not to screw anything up. But he would take games in the fourth quarter and he'd say, all right, I'm going to let you call the plays for the rest of this fourth quarter. And gave me some opportunities to call plays. And then when we came in the next day, he said, let's go through all the plays you called in the fourth quarter. Why'd you call this? Look about the situation. Look at the down and distance situation. Was this the best scenario to be in? Why did you do that? Was it based on what you'd seen earlier? And it was just constantly giving me opportunities to do it. The other thing that he always had us do is, as varsity coaches in Allen, when we went to JV games or freshman games, he told the varsity coaches, you are not allowed to tell those guys what to do. He said, if you want to train those coaches up, you do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When it gets to Thursday night, that's their opportunity to learn from what they have success with or what they mess up. So it was really hard because you get in there and you want to get down there. And he said, but that's not fair to those guys because all week long they've been coaching those kids Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on Thursday night a varsity coach shows up and then tries to run the entire show. They're not going to get any better. They're not going to learn. And so what it really allowed me to do is get opportunities where I would meet with the guys calling plays on the freshman and JV staffs during the week. Hey, what are y'all working on? What are you practicing? What are you going to run? And then on Friday mornings, we would come up and we'd watch the film together. And it was a great opportunity for us to talk through why we were coaching things a certain way, why we were doing things a certain way, because we wanted the kids at that level to understand why we would do things at the next level. And so as principals, and trying to move this back to looking at our side from the football side and your side as a principal, is how many times do you have a chance to take the time before a teacher teaches a lesson and say, hey, how are you going to go through solving equations right here? How are you going to talk through parent functions? Sorry, I'm a math guy, so that's my only thing I can go with. But you know, how many times do we do that, or do we wait till afterwards and we've done a walkthrough, or we've gone and watched a lesson and said, well, why'd you do it like that? This is the way you need to do it. And so are we taking the time to go train up those teachers on better ways to do things, especially young teachers, to give them all the help that we can give them? Okay, we talk about hiring young teachers, hiring young coaches. What about older, more experienced ones? Well, that big thing for me, as far as it goes through what your hiring process is, all right? And I've got my nice little picture of somebody getting interviewed right there. In my interviews, when we look to hire somebody, the number one thing I would say is we're going to go through what my non-negotiables are. And we're going to put it all out on the line. And if that isn't a good fit and they don't agree, or I don't think that they're going to be on the same page with us, let's call it what it is and move on and find somebody that's going to be a better situation. But for us, when we sit down, for my coaches, in order to have the impact that I want them to have on our students and our athletes, all right, first one thing, I tell them, you've got to love kids. And they say, oh yeah, I love kids. Well, no, this cannot be a hobby for you. This has got to be your passion. This has got to be your life. You got to understand, if you're not willing to give a kid a ride home every day, you can't work on the staff. If you're not willing to throw in a couple dollars to buy stuff for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for these kids, you cannot be a part of the staff. We go through 20 loaves of bread a week in our Mesquite High School locker room, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. You know how it is with kids. How do they see love? Feed them, all right? They love you a lot when we feed them, okay? Grades, all right? I explain very much to those coaches as soon as they are interviewing with me. I require them, when we get our first progress report, we're going to run a report. You're going to take every single one of your kids that's your position group, and any class that they're failing, you're going to email that teacher and ask, what can we do better to help them? And the first time I did that, one of the coaches that was still left from the old staff, he said, well, Coach, that's 24 emails I've got. He said, I've got 24 kids failing. I said, well, I guess you're going to send 24 emails then. And on top of that, how many of those kids are failing more than one? So you probably got about 36 emails to send. And for some coaches, and when I say it becomes a hobby to them, it's not important enough. They don't like all that extra work. But that's why I try to do it on the front end and say, this is what you're going to do, or you're not going to be a good fit for this staff. We're going to make sure that these kids understand that we want them more to be, not only to be a successful football player, we want them to be a successful kid in the classroom. The last thing is time commitment. I go through exactly what our week of practice in season and out of season is, so they know how much time I expect them to be committed to. I also tell them, though, with what my policies are as far as family. And I tell them, if you ever miss a doctor's visit for your wife that's pregnant to be at practice, I'm going to fire you. All right? I make sure they understand that while there's a large time commitment to what we're doing, all right, I'm a family guy also, and I expect you to let me know that, and we will cover for you. And so we go through all of that in those interviews, and I've had those interviews and brought those things up and found out pretty quickly that this guy wasn't going to be the right guy for us. And so I just, you know, when you're not hiring in June and July, how many times are you doing that in your interviews where you say, this is how we do things at Mesquite High School. This is how we do things at Poteet High School. This is how we do things at Shaw Elementary. This is how we do things at this school. And if this isn't for you, hey, let's shake hands and move on. Last thing to do as far as when we talk about coaching up coaches, all right, is in the August, we bring every single one of our coaches up from middle school, high school, and we bring them up and have staff meetings. And I go through our vision and our expectations. And I want to make sure that they understand exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think we get to staff development sometimes and we talk about a mission statement or we talk about a vision, and there's a whole lot of the what and not enough of the how. And I think that's something that you've got to be really great at in those meetings, is explaining how do we expect to do this. So we take an expectations list, and I go through this with every one of our coaches, and it has head coach expectations. I want them to know what to expect from me. Under that, I have assistant coach expectations. This is everything I tell them that I expect from them and that I am evaluating them on as a coach. At the bottom, we have player expectations. We go through this thing with our entire team. They understand what I expect of me and what they can expect of me. They understand what they can expect from our assistant coaches and the rest of our staff, and they have expectations that we have for them. And we go through every single one of those and take the time to do it. If this is something anybody would like to see, I don't mind sharing it. But the biggest thing on this is what I use to get hired for this job. This was in my book that I came to my interview with so that Dr. V would know and Steve Bragg would know this is what you can expect from me. And so I tell those coaches, I said, this right here helped me get this job. This is what I promised I was going to do. So these are my non-negotiables. These are the things we're going to do if we're going to be a successful staff. I think it's always important when you do that stuff to make sure you spread that out and make sure everybody in your team, on your staff, understands what the expectations are and what your vision is for everybody. The last part of the coaching up, I said something about coaching up or coaching out. And we don't ever like to talk about coaching out, all right? But there comes a time where you do have to discuss that thing. When I talked to Coach Westberg when I got my first head job, I said, what do you think the thing is that I'm going to struggle with the most? He said, honestly, I think the thing you're going to struggle with the most is when you have to be a jerk. And he used a different word than jerk, but I tried to clean it up for you. The other one, you know Tom, you know what he probably told me. And I kind of laughed, but he's right, all right? When you're a part of a team and you're an assistant coach or you're a teacher, you want to be liked. You want people to like you. You want to be, you like that people want to be around you, want to like you. When you move up into an administrator's role, all right, that's probably the hardest thing for us as we do that is you've got to step up and be the jerk sometimes. When I think about the staff meetings and staff, every staff development, when we get in there and have a staff meeting, all right, I'm going to be honest with you, principals, as teachers sitting there and we have the same thing set, hey guys, y'all got to do a better job. We've got to do a better job of having more grades in the computer by week 2 or week 3. And as a coach, and they know how much I'm looking in at those grades, I can tell you who the 6 teachers are. But we want to do this broad thing. We don't want to call anybody out. We don't want to be the jerk. So we're just going to bring it back into another staff meeting or another email and say, hey guys, we need to do a better job of putting grades in the computer, all right? Or we're going to set these new policies and we're going to punish everybody. Instead of grabbing those 6 and getting them in your office, and sorry, that's how we do it as coaches. If somebody in our coaching staff is not getting it done, all right, I'm going to do it professionally. I'm not going to call them out in front of everybody, but they're going to come into my office, we're going to shut the door, and I'm going to tell them exactly what needs to be done. I'm going to coach them up the first time. And then the next time, if it's not getting done, then we're going to discuss coaching them out and moving on and getting somebody else on our team. And while you don't want to constantly be switching people out on your staff, the biggest thing is don't let 1 or 2 people affect what you have going on with your staff. And so I don't know if that's a really great message that sometimes you need to be a jerk, but be a jerk sometimes. It would really help a whole lot of things. And like I said, you really don't want it to affect your entire team, your entire staff. You don't want staff frustrated with you because we can't get the message across. The same happens with kids. We have kids sometimes that quit themselves, and then we have some kids sometimes that I quit. And it's a hard thing because you've invested a whole lot of time in that person the same way you might have invested a whole lot of time in that teacher. But if it is affecting your entire staff, sometimes you got to coach them out. The last thing that, talking about impacting students through how you impact your staff, this is one of my favorite quotes of all time, okay? They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, all right? And I love that people can find these pictures of me like this because that's just that raw emotion and passion and happiness I have. I'm so genuinely excited for kids when they do something well. And really anywhere, but especially in this school district, the love, the hugs, the smiles, the things that you can do for those kids, you realize pretty quickly that it may be some of the only ones they see that day or that week. And it's a big deal to me. It's something that I talk to our coaches a lot about. And we talk about loving kids, all right? But when we talk about that impact that you have on the kid as an administrator, as a head coach, is are you loving up your teachers so that they can show that love to students? All right, and I'm talking about more than jeans passes, all right? Because I know every principal, that's the way you show love to teachers. Hey, I know this isn't going to be very fun, but you can wear jeans. So things that I do and make sure I do, because I worked for some great head coaches, and I worked and worked and worked and worked, and one of the only things I would say that I learned from them about what I was not going to do when I got to be a head coach is, as hard as we worked and we did things, is how often did they, hey, you did a great job. Hey, thanks for doing that. You did a great job. And so when I got to be a head coach, I made a point to tell myself I was constantly going to be telling my assistant coaches when they did something well, thank you, you did a great job. Man, I really appreciate how you did that. So as principals, I know how busy you get. I get busy too. But how many times do you go in the mornings and walk around your school and just stick your head in teacher's room and say, hey, how are y'all doing in here? Y'all doing great? Okay. The only time they see you, all right, and because I hear, believe me, I hear the other side of it when teachers and coaches and people complain about principals, all right? So I'm trying to help y'all out, is, well, the only time I see them is when they're doing a walkthrough. The only time, and that's a scary, the only time I see them is when they come in, and then I get nervous. Do I have the right teaks on the board? Have I done this? Have I done this? Is all my kids quiet? And, you know, we want to know that you genuinely appreciate what we're doing as teachers and coaches. And so just take the time in the morning and go walk around the school, stick your head in the door and check on those teachers, because that is going to go on to the students. All right, the amount of love that you show to those teachers, all right, because that's what, just like I said at the very beginning, we don't get as strong of an impact on those students anymore because we're not on the front lines again, all right? So what are you doing to make sure your staff and your teachers are showing them that same type of love? Wrap this up, always repping, all right? This is our other last thing that we do within our program. People give me a lot of crap for saying, oh, you're just a Twitter guy and you're all over social media and you're all that, and like I like this stuff, all right? Unfortunately, it's necessary to what we do now, all right? But the thing that I like about Twitter is it's forced people to come up with a brand. It's forced people to come up with their hashtag, their motto. What are you going to be about, all right? And when I got that job in San Antonio at a school called Brandeis, I came up with, we're going to rep the B. All right, because they had a B on everything, and when people saw that B, everybody was going to know what to expect. And we did this big thing with our coaches, our staff, about what it means to always be repping. And then 2 weeks later of March Madness, all these guys came out in these Nike shirts that said always repping. I immediately went to my t-shirt guy, stole the idea, and made up t-shirts that said always repping, but it became something that we talk about all the time. Rep the M didn't sound as cool as rep the B, so we moved to something else. But we talk to our kids all the time about you are always representing Mesquite High School. And we use examples of even when you leave here, and we show them newspaper articles where it says, former so-and-so high school kid got arrested for doing something. Former so-and-so kid did this or did that. And so what we talk to them all the time is, you're going to leave from here one day, and it's going to say, former student from Mesquite High School, former football player from Mesquite High School, but you're in charge of what they say after that. Okay? Great example of that, Rashard Higgins. Okay? Former Mesquite High School football player donates $5,000 to Ruby Shaw Elementary for backpacks. So we talk to them all the time, what are you doing to make sure you represent us the right way? That goes to teachers also. I actually have meetings with our coaches about going to staff development. all right, and how we as coaches are going to act at staff development. I encourage them. I don't want all the coaches sitting at one table. I want you sitting with your department, move around, be with other teachers, get with other departments, start building those relationships with those people, all right? But I also talk to them about when we go to staff developments district-wide and we're going to other schools, how many times do you talk to your teachers about what the message is when they're around people from other schools? We want everybody to think our school's the best. We want everybody to wish they could be at Mesquite High School. And so we talk to them all the time. You're going to be positive. You're not going to say, oh, another meeting, staff development, oh, we got to do this meeting. Hey, oh man, well, hey, we're here. We can work together. We can figure stuff out. We constantly want them to be positive about what's going on because we want people to come work at Mesquite High School. We want people to be on our staff. And so when we talk to our coaches, all right, I have the same expectations for them that we have our students. I expect them to always be repping Mesquite High School in the right way because we are. I thought I was going to forget that one. They did. But I don't think there's any other way to really describe how great this thing is about always repping than these feeder patterns that we've started now. And I was just so fired up when I've had my first meeting with Dr. V, and he talked to me about what we were trying to do with the feeder programs because now we can do something like this always repping message from all the way down, from elementary schools all the way up. And I encourage you as much as possible to get into those elementary schools and get everything going all the way up to the high schools so that all of these students here in Mesquite ISD, it can be impacted the way that we know they should. I know some of those were a stretch trying to put coaches with principals, all right, but just trying to share my heart. I appreciate this time. Thank you very much.